Marcus Dell'Artino and Mike O'Neill, two great political consultants, our guests here on Newsmaker Sunday. I want to go to the Diane Douglas race for superintendent of public instruction. Boy, you talk to anybody, and David Garcia, the challenger, a Democrat. Okay, I get it. We've talked about this, Michael. He's got a D by his name, and maybe that harmed him. But there were so many Republicans who endorsed Garcia. How does he lose?
Both prior, most recent Republican office holders in that office, among others. I think most of us were more astounded by that race than any
That was
other.
a big shocker.
And not only him being highly qualified, but she locked herself up in her house and was unavailable to the media except for one obligatory debate that she had
Clean
to
elections,
attend to
right.
in order to get, what, $750,000 to clean up.
Marcus, are we misreading her? We did not get to know her in the press because we really didn't have a lot of access. So we don't really know what we're getting here. We really have no sense of it.
Well, I think a couple things you got to understand. I mean, most people don't know what the superintendent of public instruction does. So by the time you get down to that on the ballot, you look at the R versus the D. And again, the Democrats didn't turn out. Clearly, there was Republican crossover.
Okay.
But the Democrats didn't turn out to vote.
Let's get to these congressional races real quickly. Congressional District 1. Ann Kirkpatrick looked vulnerable. Again, a bad year for Dems, but Tobin couldn't. And in the end, she beat him by 6 points. This shows after you've been in there, if you get a couple of cycles, you're pretty tough to beat, even in a bad year.
All of the national services that rated this district as one of about only 12 in the country that were just completely dead on.
We had 3 of them here.
Yeah. Well, Kirsten Sinema was originally in that category, and she moved out.
Right.
As the Republic put it, she was a force of nature, and through her persona, not through that district, she moved herself into a lean Democrat.
Did you think that'd be tighter?
I thought it'd be a lot tighter, absolutely. And it was the #1 race in the country. I mean, money was being thrown at this left and right. The Navajo Nation election was up in the air, shall we say, at best. It was the best opportunity for Republicans for a pickup seat. I don't think the scenario could have been better. But, you know, when you look back at this race, clearly something was going on during early balloting. The Republican Andy Tobin should have performed better during early balloting to have that cushion going into.
Do you believe,
election
you know,
day.
you hear some people who say if we want reform in Congress, we need every district to look like District 1 in Arizona, where it's a battle. It's a battle every 2 years so that ideas reign supreme and not just money.
That's absolutely true, and it's unattainable under current law.
Okay.
Because you would have to make, we could make 8 or 9 competitive districts here, but those districts would look like the most contrived things that you would ever.
They already look contrived.
But it would be way worse. It would be way worse because Democrats live together and Republicans live together. And if you want competitive districts, that has to be the #1 criteria, that we will do whatever it takes, absent any other criteria, to make competitive districts.
Competitive. Let's go to District 2, and this one is still up in the air right now. Ron Barber is trailing Martha McSally. This is really southern Arizona. It's eastern Tucson going into Cochise County. This is Gabby Gifford's old district. Barber's the incumbent. McSally ahead as we tape on Friday by a few hundred votes. Do you expect Barber to win this? Let me start with you, Marcus.
Well, I'm the Republican, so I'm going to say I expect McSally to squeak this out.
I don't know if I share your view on that.
It's the tightest race out there. It comes down to, there's 2 different schools of thought. I mean, where are the remaining ballots from and who voted them? Are they from Pima County? Are they from Cochise County? What's the age demographic?
When will we know?
What's the party
or will we
demographic?
know as we're showing this on Sunday morning?
I think
we're going to know a little bit more in about an hour.
Yeah, okay.
But not complete. I ran 2 simulations on this based on 2 assumptions. First set of assumptions was Pima County versus Cochise County, and McSally hangs on under that assumption. The second assumption was to look at the difference between early ballots and day of election ballots. And under that assumption, Barber squeaks it out. In neither case did it get into 4 digits. It's that close.
Quickly, Kirsten Sinema, you said it before. This is District 9, and this was competitive early on, maybe. Is she going to run against John McCain?
Well, there's a whole long laundry list of people that are scheduled to run against John McCain.
But is she the most formidable, potentially?
She is definitely one of the most formidable on the Democratic side. Absolutely, she is a great politician. She's a great campaigner.
You're a Republican saying this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Republicans need to. You've got to be smart about this and be able to judge your adversary. She is a wonderful campaigner. She's great in policy. She's everywhere all the time.
She works hard.
She really does.
Michael?
Force of nature. In fact, the only people the least bit ticked off at her are very liberal Democrats who say she's voted too centrist. And that's exactly what you want to be if you want to run statewide in Arizona.
I have heard that a lot. Do you think she challenges McCain?
That is, my head hasn't gone there. That would be one intriguing match. That would have gender, that would have a couple of generations, that would have all future versus the past. That would be one interesting race.
All right, one more thing, and I don't know if we can get to it. Any propositions that surprised you?
I don't think I was really, I mean, to a certain extent, a little bit 487 surprised me. The margin was bigger than I thought. 480, the no side never had any money. And what was strange about that, huge Republican turnout. It was also a huge tax increase.
But nobody is going to, no one's going to vote against, if there's any doubt that if firefighters or police are going to lose a death benefit, which was the campaign. Whether that was honest or not, that's a debate for another time. But nobody's going to vote against that.
And that's what absolutely everybody heard. Well, it's against the police and firefighter. And you know what? Quite frankly, there's legitimate debate of whether that's true or not, but that doesn't happen on the campaign. Campaigns aren't about we don't debate
winning.
Facts anymore.
It's about winning.
On the other, I was astounded. $1 billion for the state hospital. It wins 2-1. It kind of reminded me, this country went Republican nationally, and all across the country we voted legal marijuana, tax increases, you name. Oh, and minimum wage increases, 5 out of 5. We voted for Democratic policies and voted for Republicans.
Okay, one quick thing. I'll get you to both weigh in on it. Mark Brnovich joins us, the Attorney General-elect. Anything about that race that surprised you, Brnovich and Rodolini?
Well, he's a Cinderella story for the Republican Party. I mean, he squeaks it out against Tom Horn, and then he ends up beating Felicia Rodolini. Felicia was scheduled very early on in this campaign to be the next Attorney General.
Right.
And he just watched it slowly slip away.
What do you think, Mike?
He did terrific for a guy who started out as not Tom Horn. Because that's what got him to the primary.
He's got some things that are really intriguing. He is a very plain-spoken guy. We haven't had that in politics for a while. Really plain-spoken. Do you think there's more happening with him future-wise? I'll ask him today, but he won't tell me. But do you think?
I think right now he's scheduled on, look, can he repair the relationship that was broken with the county attorney's office and get the AG's office up and running? I think he's going to be really policy-focused and concerned about the state of Arizona as it relates to the federal government. I think we're going to see a lot of interaction lawsuits from the AG's office against some of the environmental impacts that Arizona's been doing.
And it's the second most prominent job in the state after governor.
That's right.
It's not next in line, but it's a far more significant office inherently than Secretary of State.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you, and we'll do it again in 2 years. But we'll have you back before then. All right, in a moment, we're going to meet again. We met him Tuesday night. We've been meeting him throughout the campaign. Mark Brnovich, who will be your new Attorney General come January. Mark Brnovich joins us in a moment.
Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. It's the Sunday after Election Tuesday, and we wanted to kind of go through this and rehash. And later in the program, we're going to be joined by the newly elect Attorney General, Mark Brnovich. He will spend some time with us here on Newsmaker Sunday, his first big interview after winning that seat. But we're going to start with Marcus Dell'Artino, who's on the left of your screen, and Mike O'Neill, who's a longtime political guy on the right of your screen, and we're going to hash this thing out. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Let's show the final total on the Doug Ducey, Fred Duval race for governor. Were you surprised by the margin, Marcus?
I wasn't. I thought there would be a point in this campaign where it broke loose, and it certainly did. And Barry Hess was sort of the unknown factor. How much of a percentage was he going to take? But when you looked at the campaign coming down to the closing, I think conventional wisdom, Ducey was ahead. But the pounding that Duval was taking and the lack of response from his campaign, I think, added to this.
Mike, Fred Duval, and I've talked about it because I've known him since the Babbitt administration. He's really kind of a center guy. He seemed to be positioned pretty well to make this competitive, and in the end, it wasn't.
He is a center guy, but he ran with a D next to his name. I mean, my arithmetic.
It's that simple.
My arithmetic this year. My arithmetic on this race was pretty simple. The Republicans start out with a 6% voter registration advantage. Add 4 for the fact that it's an off-year election. That gets you to 10. Off-year election, Republicans vote and Democrats vote in presidential years. So
this
that's
is
10 points. I thought he'd beat the spread. He didn't even do that.
Can somebody explain? I mean, this is pretty crafty on the Republicans' part. All these big races, these statewide races, are done on midterm years. They're not done on presidential years.
Tailor-made for Republicans. They will do better.
By design?
No, I don't think it's by design, but it's a fact of matter that we do better when there's low turnout, and Democrats do better when there's high turnout. And add to the factor here, you know, the Obama administration is not exactly popular now, and that certainly was the contributing
factor. The bigger
factor.
fact here was who votes. There are very, very few people out there who changed their mind about who they're voting for. But a whole lot of Democrats who voted 2 years ago stayed at home this time.
I want to run
absolutely.
tape number one. This is Doug Ducey on election night. We may not listen to all of it, but I wanted to take a little of it and just get your sense of where he's going here.
I want to say to all of you, thank you very much, and thank you, Arizona. I'm grateful for the privilege you have given me, for the trust you have placed in me, and I pledge my best efforts as the governor of this great state. It was a long way to the finish line, and I am proud of the race we have run. When things got tough, we hung in there.
Well, that was Doug Ducey on election night. Now, guys, I just want to get your sense of it, because one of the shrewdest things he's done this week, he's announced that he's going to meet with each Republican and Democratic lawmaker down there to get a sense of where they're coming from. That, to me, is a very, very smart move. Do you agree?
Hard to argue with that, but he is facing one thing right in the face, which is billion-dollar state deficits. Neither candidate in this campaign really gave you arithmetic that was honest, but when he actually has to govern now, he's going to have to deal with real numbers, and he's going to have to face some very unpleasant choices.
What do you expect out of his administration from the get-go?
Well, I think you're seeing it. I mean, the fact that he's willing on essentially week one to go down to the legislature, meet with everybody down there is it will be a refreshing change of pace for them. Jan Brewer had a different style. She grew up in the 80s at the legislature. The legislature worked its body, and the executive worked its body, and that was it. This is a different style, and I think it's going to pan out pretty well for him.
Do you Fife Symington told me you cannot prepare for that job. I mean, he came in as a business guy. This is what Doug Ducey's doing, although Ducey's held the treasurer office for 4 years. He said this learning curve is steep, and this is a guy who'd been around business. He said you cannot prepare for this.
You know, I think one of the nuttiest, least honest epithets in running for office is, I'm going to run government like a business. Government is not a business. You cannot, in a business, it's real simple. I want to take in a certain amount of money, give out, pay, and whatever,
and you're the
and
boss.
Have money left over. It's a very simple objective. Government is about figuring out what the objective is. That's way more complex.
Do you think he's got an objective, what he wants to do? I mean, he's talked about over time, lessening the tax burden, trying to get rid of the state income tax if he can do it. That's going to be a tough
what he wants
thing
to do, regardless, but what he needs to do and what he wants to do are going to be center stage is build the economy. We've got to get the economy moving
Can
again.
the governor move the needle on that?
That's debatable. I mean, it's going to have to be in combination of what the federal government's going to do, but we're going to have to do something to get this moving, because the deficit, to your point, is $1 billion or maybe $2 billion.
Yeah, it's really $1.5 billion between the 2 years.
We're running out of choices here. Tax cuts may not work, but we're going to have to grow the economy.
Let's go to the Secretary of State's race. This is the governor in waiting in Arizona. 3 times since 1988, our Secretary of State has assumed the job of governor. So Michelle Reagan, who's known, she's been around, she's been a Scottsdale lawmaker in the House and the Senate. You know how that game is played. You go from one to the other until you're term limited, and you keep bouncing back and forth. This is not casting aspersions on Michelle Reagan. Everybody does it down there. You know this. She wins by 4 percentage points over a guy that everybody knew much better. Terry Goddard's been around, 2-term attorney general. Was there Terry Goddard fatigue in Arizona, do you think?
No, I think one of those 2 candidates had an R next to their name. The other
Again,
had
it's that simple.
I think that, because first of all, Terry Goddard beat that spread, that 10% deficit that he started out with on day one. He beat the spread, but he didn't beat it by 10 points.
He had a 10% deficit in that race.
I'm saying that's what everybody started out with.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to say this is a perfect example of the Democrats caused this problem, not the Republicans. The turnout in Ruben Gallego's district was dismal. It was, and you can say the same for Grijalva.
Raul Grijalva, I was just going to say.
So there was crossover for him, but had those 2 congressional districts, the Democrats, come out and vote, I think it would have changed the dynamics.
Factoid on Ruben, I looked at the figures. Ruben got fewer votes than the losing candidate in every other district except one.
Unbelievable. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with Marcus Dell'Artino and Mike O'Neill, two really good political consultants. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Sunday. Mark Brnovich, the new Attorney General. Well, he hasn't been sworn in, but he was elected on Tuesday night. He'll join us later in the program. Back on Newsmaker Sunday, and pleased to have on the program one of the big winners from Tuesday night, Mark Brnovich, who will be your new Attorney General in January. Good to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, John.
Let's show the graphic, because I want to, and you can smile while you look at this. Was the spread bigger than even you thought it would be?
Well, it's about where we thought. Going down towards the end, we had gotten a real sense that momentum seemed to be building our way. I know a lot of the pundits and stuff had said that this was going to be the closest of the races and stuff, but I just got a really strong sense when we were out there talking to folks and being in the community. It seemed like the momentum was growing, and I had more people calling me and more people showing up at events and even more people wanting to contribute to the campaign, and that was all a sign to us that things were going to break very well.
Now, you may have heard, you may not care, but I did mention you on election night, and I said, this guy reminds me a little bit of Chris Christie. I said, now before you go there, I said, just...
I'm an overweight federal prosecutor?
No, that's what I... and I said kind of a gentler Chris Christie, that you are very plain-spoken. We hadn't seen anything this direct in a while around here.
Well, I appreciate that, John, and as you know, I've never run for office, so maybe I'm naive. You know, we never did any polling, internal polling. I am who I am. You know, I'm a kid. I grew up here. I'm a public school kid. Went to ASU. I mean, all that's who I am. And you know, I guess some people like that, but people always know where I stand. And you know, I told someone recently on election night that if I never run for office again, it doesn't matter to me.
Honestly.
It really does. I've got a great wife, a great family, and as you know, my mother was an immigrant to this country, and I feel like I'm playing with house money. And I wanted to be AG because I truly want to get in there, and I think that office needs to be fixed, and I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our
What do you
community
want to
safe.
do? What do you want to do? How do you want to fix it?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is we just announced, or on Friday, we had announced our transition team and folks that have been both in the private sector and that have worked at that office before. And we want to make sure that we are doing everything as efficiently as possible and also making sure that our priorities are straight.
What are those priorities?
And one of the first things that we need to do is make sure we're doing everything we can to protect the most vulnerable. I mean, as you know, during the campaign, I talked about, look, why are so many cases of abuse and neglect not being investigated? Why aren't they being prosecuted? Elderly abuse cases. We need to make sure we're out there, whether it's at nursing homes or out in the community, or whether it's folks that are getting taken advantage of by telemarketers, whatever. We need to make sure we're protecting those, the most vulnerable, like our seniors, folks like my mom, or maybe your mom or your aunt and uncle, the folks that really are maybe too trusting sometimes of people. And I want to make sure that we're also being very aggressive and working with federal, state, and local authorities and going after the cartels that are not only smuggling drugs and people in this country, but engaging the sex trafficking trade.
As you went through this thing, what was the biggest kind of aha moment as you were becoming a politician and running for office?
In all sincerity, this last couple of months when all those negative ads were running against me, there's two things that stand out. One is my mother, who had been through so much.
She didn't vote for you.
No. I had never seen her that upset. No, but this is what happened, though. I was at Albertsons, and I must admit I was buying a couple pops, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
And someone came up
to you
me
and
said,
to ASU, I understand what you mean.
And someone said, "Hey, aren't you the guy running for AG?" And then the lady, the woman said, like, "Hey, you're much better looking in person." And I was like, no one's ever said that before. So I guess those ads made me look a little bit worse than I really am.
When you sit home and you'd watch these ads, come on. Mark Brnovich, he's going to burn your house down. What did you think? And what did your kids think? What did your wife think?
Okay, you know, I can deal with it. I'm a big boy. You know, I've been a federal prosecutor, state prosecutor. I was an Army officer. I can handle it. But the hard part for me, the hardest one was, seriously, is my mother was very upset about it. In fact, she stopped watching daytime TV the last couple of weeks because of the ads. So
now, conversely, you had to do this to the other side. Now, maybe not you personally, but somebody.
I never ran any negative ads, and I'm very proud of that. All the ads that we ran our campaign were all about my background, my experience.
So all those negative ads about Felicia, where were those coming from? From the National Party?
There was the Republican Attorney General's Association ran ads, as did the Democratic Attorney General's Association, and I was outspent by more than $500,000.
When you talked to Felicia when she finally conceded, which was what, Thursday?
Yeah, we traded phone calls, actually.
Did you talk to her personally?
No, we exchanged phone calls, yeah. she had left a message for me, and when I tried to get a hold of her, we left messages for each other.
What would you like to say to her?
I thought that she was a very worthy opponent. I thought it was a tough race. I think it was a tough race on both of us. But at the end of the day, you know, as in life, sometimes one person wins, sometimes one person loses. But, you know, I was committed. And I know that a lot of times she tried to characterize me as an ideologue or anything, but I love this state, and I am committed to being the best attorney general I can for all Arizonans. And that's why on election night, you know, I never prepare a speech. I like to fancy myself as kind of the Jerry Garcia, just go up there without a set list and start jamming. Although I will say, John, I said that at a
Grateful Dead references.
I said that at a Republican event, and some lady turned to some other lady and said, "What's this Jerry Garcia thing?" And the other lady said, "Oh my God, I hope he's not a drug addict," and which I'm not. Just so we're clear, I hope my kids turn the channel off here. But in all sincerity, the people that voted for me, I will work hard every day to reward their trust. And for the people that didn't, I'm going to work hard every day to earn their trust.
When you were running, as you were going through it, was there a big part of this, I mean, the ads and the stuff, that really turned you off, that you said, this is a joke?
I will tell you what, I guess I don't want to say I'm naive because I understand politics, but there isn't this great like debate of principles and let's talk about the role of government or let's talk about where the Attorney General's priorities should or shouldn't be. It very often, and not just in my race, I think even in the other races, it very often regressed into a caricature of what people really were and what they stood for.
Is there any way to fix this?
You know, I would like, I guess, you know, and one of the things I've always thought of, like in Great Britain, you know, in the United Kingdom, they have their parliament time, the speaker's time, and I am really committed when I'm AG, and maybe once again, it's because I'm new to politics, but I would love to have regular press conferences, be on these shows. And, you know, if you're making decisions, if you're an elected official, you should be able to sit there and explain why.
So I'm going to be able to book you on the program.
Oh, absolutely.
No problem.
I look forward to it.
Okay, that's a good, I'm going to mark you down on that.
All right.
Because there will be things that come up that we want to have you on.
Absolutely.
If there was a thing that you wanted folks to know about where you want to take this office, you ticked off those most vulnerable and all of that, but just overarching, what are you going to get out of Mark Brnovich?
I am going to work hard every day to protect our Arizona families. I want to make this a safer community. In fact, I didn't really talk about this a lot in public, but privately, I remember when I was a kid growing up here and I was a paper boy for the Republic, and you know, my friends and I, we'd ride our bikes down to the Kmart or 7-Eleven, you know, on the weekends, and I don't know if I would let my daughters do that anymore.
It's a sad thing.
It is a sad thing. And I don't know if there's ever a way to recapture that, but I am going to work so hard every day to make sure that people feel safe in their communities. And that's why even when I was a prosecutor, I used to always say, no one deserves to live in fear. They should be able to walk their kids to school, stay in their houses at night and watch their, you know, Fox News or whatever, and you know, have their businesses not being worried about being broken into. That, I mean, I know that there's never any perfection here, but we should work hard every day to make this a safer place.
When you look at the other part of the job, which is being the state's advocate,
yes,
you may have to defend policies you don't even agree with.
Absolutely.
In court. I mean, if the state does something that is, you think off the grid, but you're like, look, I got to go in and defend this, that's not a problem.
The Attorney General's job is to enforce the law. You don't make the law. And no person is above the law, no matter he or she is or isn't. And at the end of the day, if people don't like the laws, you change the governor, you change the legislature. In Arizona, we have an initiative process where you can change the Constitution and statutes. And so
sometimes it's messy.
Yes, it is. And you know, what's the old quote? You shouldn't watch sausage or legislation being made.
One more thing. We've got about a minute left. Where do you think we're going with this marijuana thing in this state? Because I think we're going to see a legalization, recreational, coming down the pike.
I'll tell you what, John. First and foremost, I didn't realize there were so many snowboarders here in Arizona. But I shouldn't say that. I'm such a bad politician. No, but in all sincerity, look, I'm against drug legalization. But we do know that, you know, Washington, Colorado have legalized it. Other states recently have also legalized it. And I think as Arizonans, we shouldn't rush into that. You know, we are the 50.
We're going to have a couple of years, but that's about it.
But
it's coming.
There's the 50 laboratories of democracy. Other states are experimenting in it. You hear different stories about the impacts, and is there an increase in emergency room visits? Are these edibles? Are they causing all sorts of problems? And so, you know, let's wait and see while other laboratories of democracy are experimenting with that, and let's not use our kids or our communities as the guinea pigs.
Well, it's good to see you. Congratulations.
Thanks, John.
And
Thank
the
you so
last
much.
time we had you on here, it was you and Felicia Rodolini debating, and I appreciated that both of you came on the program that day. So
I appreciate it, John. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Mark Brnovich, your new Attorney General. That will actually formally happen in January. Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday, and we'll see you next week. And Mark, congratulations.
Thanks, John. Seriously, thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and get all the best videos from Fox 10.